So hi Bart, welcome to the FintechOS Evolve Insurance podcast. So good that you're here, and we just want to have this talk around transformation, the challenges, the successes, and why is it or why isn't it not working in our industry. So great to have you on board, mate.
Thank you, Scott. Really looking forward to the chat today. I think between us we've seen most things, haven't we? 60 odd years worth of it, or more even between us. It's frightening.
We certainly have, and I think I just want to set the scene. Look, I think we're at a crossroads in technology, customer expectation, and I think what we'd like to talk about. Let's just plan this out. Let's just open up. Why hasn't transformation worked over the last 10, 15, 20 years that we've been in this business trying to solve it? What's your initial thoughts?
Well, let's think about that in a way. Why isn't transformation work? Well, what's the outcome of it? When you look back at it, I was looking earlier, the actuary stated that £15 billion has been spent over the last 10 years on digital transformation. If you look back in 2011, Capgemini and MIT were the first people to caption the term transformation in insurance. So we've had 14, 15 years of this. What is it? 20%, only 20% of companies got anywhere near the stated benefits, the 75% of the benefits that they stated at the beginning of their transformation journey. Operating ratios are still persistently high despite repeated different changes on this, going through the whole outsourcing, different genres and what we call it, vintages, let's put it that way, of technologies coming in, all sorts of things. We haven't got to where we need to go, and we're still talking about transformation. I think transformation is becoming a bit of a dirty word, quite frankly.
But Bart, what do you think if we just look back in time, if we start right the way back to when we were first
when we were young.
When we were young. Look, we've seen organizations, it could be insurers, MGAs, brokers, we've seen them go through all the different technology phases.
Yeah.
And all they were doing is replacing the new, they're replacing the old with the new,
Yeah.
and nothing seems to be changing. It's still the same process of building products, getting it to customers. Nothing has significantly changed. Why do you think it is? Because we need to change it. We're there. We're at the edge. We're just about, and hopefully later on in this little podcast, we're going to talk about the successes and how we can change this with the approaches we're adopting at the moment. But what's gone wrong? Is it technology? Is it people? Is it processes?
Yeah, it's a curious one, isn't it? I mean, think back to the earliest days when I got involved in the industry. We were still using mainframes. I am not old enough to have seen punch cards, by the way, although I knew people that had. But when I started, it was mainframes, AS400, green screen tech. That was in for a long time, actually. That had a long period in there. It couldn't do anything like what we wanted to do at the moment. It was fairly linear in the way that it worked and didn't have all the connectivity that we have now. Then we moved to 4GLs, the sort of client-server stuff that was meant to sort all the problems out of the world. When was that? I'm trying to think about that. It was probably, 1998, something like that. And then we hit
The
web, and it was going to solve all problems. And so what happened then was all the 4GL stuff, the client-server stuff, got a nice glossy front end. It got GUIfied. Remember the whole GUIfication of everything? I remember that very clearly. And then the web evolved, and the initial part of the web, Web 1.0 or whatever you want to call it, just didn't have the grunt to do what we all wanted to do with it. And it did some of it, and then it kind of didn't do the rest. And as everything's moved on, technology has evolved and evolved and evolved. But all the historical technologies, you look at any insurance company and give it a little poke or a little bit of a scratch, if it's been around long enough, it's still in there. It's still in there. It's still beavering away in the background, hidden somewhere in the maze of architecture that's there, and it's all in there. And I think there's a lot of this sort of fundamental, even now we're in sort of the world of the cloud server, cloud SaaS offerings, those sorts of things. And there's a big difference between cloud native and managed hosted service. But on top of that, now we've got the spectre of AI looking at us. And everything's moved so fast, but it's all still in there.
But Bart, given that, look, are we on the digital journey? I think we're there, but I don't think the classification of digital is yet. Look, having all this legacy tech around and putting a nice glossy front end on it and saying it's digital is not really the answer.
No.
We all know this. Now the question is, why is it like that, and how has it become like that? So what I'm keen on also exploring is what do you think we have to do? There has been so much time and money wasted. Maybe it's a misconception around requirements gathering or whatever it is, but what do we need to do, given that we're at that crossroads where we can make a difference now with companies like FintechOS and yourself? What do you think we need to be focusing on to try and bring the negativity out of transformation projects? Look, I know certain projects that have been hundreds of millions that are sitting on the shelf and still they're not coming out. And we've seen them, and there's a reason why they're not coming out. And again, there's a whole raft of reasons why. But I'm just thinking now it is time to change, and it is time to make transformation that far more successful. But there is still some key components that we have to get right, and I'm still not convinced that they're being delivered yet.
It's really interesting what you say. So picking up on, I don't know whether you realised it, but you started talking about a journey. And I think the thing about transformation is it's not an end. It is, you're just still on that journey. There's no end to this. There's no end to innovation. There's no end to these things. And I think thinking about transformation as something that has a start, middle, and end, I think is incorrect. So I think that is a problem that we've got to stop thinking about it in terms of we've created this transformation and it's going to get somewhere. And all of a sudden at the end, there's going to be singing and dancing in the streets and everybody's going to have wonderful tech. It'll have moved on by then. I think that's the fundamental nature of it. It is a journey. We have to accept that it's a journey. But there are a number of things that we need to think about when we're doing this. And I think it's where we start on this. We actually have to be really honest with ourselves as an industry. And I think that honesty will really help. So, I spend a lot of my time helping companies within the industry. And the first thing I always ask them to be really honest about where you are. And I think if we're really honest about where we are in digital transformation, it hasn't delivered, as we're discussing. But once we've understood that, is what do we need to change in order to make that happen? And again, we've spoken about this on a number of occasions. The common problem with all transformation journeys or all change, not just transformation, I'd stop using transformation, change within a business. It comes down to that initial agreement between the parties and the understanding between the parties of actually what is going to get delivered and when. And every single, the loss of confidence in transformation and change is down to the fact that nothing ever gets delivered on time or budget. That's really important.
And Bart, do you think that's not just the responsibility of the insurer, is it?
Nope.
There's a heavy dependence on people, technology providers like ourselves, to actually understand the requirements and challenge them requirements so that when we come to build products, we build it correct. Otherwise, we end up delivering something that isn't quite fit for purpose, and then we have to go back all the way through the process and try and understand where we went wrong. And I think this is why a lot of transformation or projects fail, is because the pure lack of understanding between what the customer thinks they want and what the technology providers think they can offer, there is potential gaps.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? When you think about it, the overinflated expectation of change, but also the, how should I put it, underused reality of documentation. And again, something that is persistent in it is, and forgive me, all the technical people I know in this, but techies hate writing stuff down. They really do. So always the documentation at the end is always the last thing. But that clarity of understanding between the two parties, this is what we promised to deliver, this is how we're going to deliver, and this how much it's going to cost is so important.
This is where I think when I said right at the beginning about the crossroads, and I do feel, even though I am cynical about all of this, I am starting to see a change, and especially with technology like we offer, just addressing that issue. Anytime a product is built, there's full documentation and auditability and traceability of everything you've done. So it helps when you come to build the product because it's already there. Whereas, so there's a clear path of where you started from and where you've got to.
It is pervasive in the industry. There's a need for governance. There's a need for understanding. There's a need for everything from setting out the meeting cadences during the delivery process and all those sorts of things. But when it comes down to it, there's also a lack of governance during the delivery and during the process.
So Bart, do you think, is there still the chance with the latest technology and our new approach, do you think there is still the chance that we can just fall back into line like all of the other people that have attempted to do this before us? Or do you genuinely think now we're at that point where we can start making transformation work? Because I don't know what the payoff, I don't know how long it takes. In my terms, how many policies do you have to sell in order to recover that technical debt that you've built up over the last 15 years? So are we at that stage, or do you think we're still potentially at risk of just adding in another layer, and I can put it crudely, another layer of failure? If you want to class all of these products, we're just layering and layering, and nothing's moved on. Like we were talking about before, what is the most important thing? The most important thing is for an insurer to provide a product that a consumer wants. Yeah. And we want to make that as quickly and as simple and as efficient as possible. But it doesn't seem to work like that, does it?
No, it doesn't. So, we haven't spoken about technical debt, actually. It's one of my favourite subjects. But technical debt is something, it's an inevitability. And actually, you can actually quantify in terms of the value of technical debt that you have. There are a number of rules of thumb that you can use, and I'm not going to go into those here. There's a whole spreadsheet of stuff that I've got for doing that. But technical debt's really important because technical debt is the headwinds that you run into or the drag that you have in terms of any change that you want in there. I think it's becoming less prevalent, technical debt, because of the nature of SaaS, because of the nature of evergreen technologies like FintechOS. Mm-hmm. And having a platform that actually evolves, and it's the company's, so the providing company's responsibility to keep it technologically relevant and not the insurers. I think that's a fundamental change. That's a promise that's been going on for, well, probably 2017 is probably when this whole talk of evergreen, this whole talk of the technology provider being responsible for keeping the technology relevant, up to date, and all those sorts of things. And if you have your technology provider doing that, you can then, as an IT department or as a company, start to deal with the other parts of your technical debt because that new bit that you put in is not going to age. And I think that's really important. That's it's an old term, but build for change. And I think that's a paramount requirement, but I think the technologies now actually make that possible.
Because I think if we, you know, like I said, we've both been in this business a long time, and I've seen a lot of projects, some successful, a lot of failures. But I think I'm now at the stage where I think one of the successes for organizations like FintechOS is it's got some unique selling points, I feel. So it's not enough just to be software as a service, because that term is dying. It's not enough. What we really need to start looking at is the ability, I still feel, to facilitate business users and not be so dependent, but I know there's a requirement for this, not to be so dependent on IT and systems integrators in order to build your product, because it is a business-led initiative. And I think the way in which we've orchestrated and architected our solution, it just allows business users to start building products very, very quickly if there's a need to change in the market. And also just the ability with our sort of our value, our price point is really, really sweet, and it's interesting to companies. And it's not just the tiers, the tier 3 and tiers 4 that we're aiming for, but obviously the MGAs and brokers that are all moving and changing and looking to build products, especially around, you're probably familiar with the term with the life-centric view, where it's not just a standard product, but it's your life. And I think the ability for new players to come into the market that necessarily haven't got the IT resource or the technology capability, it's very attractive with products like us, just the way in which we build it.
Again, I'm going to say this a lot today. It's an interesting point. I see it across the board from the tier 1s down. Regardless, even if you've got an IT department, there is the concept of the IT bottleneck. There's only a certain number of people in IT, and they can only do a certain number of things, including keeping the lights on. But if you're constantly pushing through new products, or you're taking, M&A is a constant thing that's going on in the market. You're bringing a new company, you want to reduce your costs, so you want to move everything into a single system. Well, there's a cost of doing that, and actually you just have to get in the queue. So when you're thinking about rate changes, it goes from the actuarial department, they create the baseline tables, then the underwriters fiddle around with it, and then it has to be brought and imported into the platform. Well, how do you go about that? Now, clearly I'm seeing a lot of this at the moment, and I'm seeing it's quite tribal, the whole rating thing. You've got the companies that think you need a proprietary platform. I have to say Excel is a constant companion, as is all shadow IT, whether it's for reinsurance, for claims or whatever it is. There's always this secondary industry behind every insurance company. But the question is how do you take that from that background, no matter where it's come from, whether it's from the actuarial department or from the underwriters or whatever format it's in, and get it into the where it's going to make the most benefit, which is when it gets pushed out to the customer. And how do you make that a seamless journey? Now, as you know, I'm a big fan of Excel. And the reason being is that the problem's not Excel. The problem is the connectivity of Excel into the platform and the reliability and the governance of that. And clearly that's an area that we work on. But overall, what we're talking about here is, regardless of where it comes from, is limiting that IT bottleneck to speed up from the point of the new product being decided or the new rate change being decided to when it actually gets into action and starts giving benefits to the insurance company. I think that's critical, and I think that starts with, at the back office, but runs right the way through, particularly things like what you guys do.
And I think that's just on that note, and I think that's where we're really, really complementary, because we can manage very, very complex businesses where we've got multiple rating structures, we've got multiple formulas, we've got multiple risk coverages. We can do it all, and yet we can also cater for the very single one line. So our challenges, and I think this is why, having been through this several times recently, this is what I like about our product, is just the functionality and the flexibility to cater for different business lines, different needs, different regulatory requirements. Everyone's, we've talked about this, everyone's got different set of requirements. There isn't just one that fits all. And I think the reason for organizations that are going to be successful is going to be the ability to cater for this mishmash of everything, because no one is the same. Even though the industry is the same, everyone has got, we've talked about it, their little unique piece, secret sauce that they're not going to give away, but in reality, we just need to be able to cater for it.
We do, and you're talking even from the starting points there. So not only is it the secret sauce bit, the bit that makes every company unique, it's not just the rating structures, but it's also their distribution channels, their routes to market, their culture within their business, their image, their brand, all these sorts of things. It makes them very different. But fundamentally, insurance is insurance. We're taking premiums, we've got a basket of risks, we've got to make sure that we're charging a realistic premium, because we're businesses after all. Not all of them. We've got some of the mutuals which have a not-for-profit motive, which is fair enough. That's a different way of doing things, and they return the profits back to their members. But also with the more commercial organisations, we've got this baseline of different technologies within these companies. We've got this baseline of different people and all that. But fundamentally, we charge an adequate premium. We manage it well, we try and reduce the costs, and we produce a result at the end of it where everybody's actually covered. And risk, the fundamental of indemnity and the fundamentals of pooling of risk are at the heart of what we do. It's just everybody does it differently.
So, Bart, do you think on that note, look, we've talked a little bit about the history, how we've got here, all the layering of transformations. Is it successful? Who knows? A lot of technical debt. There's all reason for that. We're trying to work out the reason for a successful transformation route. Do we need, as part of that route, do we need to mention AI, or do you think it's just a buzzword, or do you think it's starting to have an impact on the way we transform the insurance business and the speed at which we can build products and settle claims? Or do you think it's just ML, DevOps, traditional analytics that I've been doing all my life? It's just rebadged and it's just fitting in the same slot as everything else? Or do you think we're turning?
We're definitely turning a corner, and there's a fundamental reason.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Yeah, lucky. Good question. But no, there is fundamentally a difference now. So, we've been around this for a long time.
We have.
My relationship with analytics and machine learning and all that stuff goes back to 2007. And back then, we had self-learning algorithms. We had all of that stuff back then. What we didn't have were two things: the data and the horsepower. And I think with the advent of cloud computing and all that, we've almost got infinite data because of the internet, and we've almost got virtually infinite computing power because of the availability of cloud computing. That's what's come together to create these, LLMs and all of the other stuff that we need for AI. I think AI is a real thing. I'm not convinced about the artificial intelligence bit of it, the intelligence bit, but we've got something that can make an amazing decision based on a huge vat of data out there, and it can do it fast. It can interpret what you're doing, it can look at what other things are doing, and then it can come up with something that looks really natural. So it's real. The question really is what are the accurate use cases, the real use cases that we need now in insurance to be successful?
So, look, this is. I love this topic. Right? I love pricing. I love claims, and a bit like you, I've always been in the analytics space. So, I think traditionally and still insurers can't do this, and I don't know why. I get really. I'm not going to get angry. I just get frustrated. The insurers have been building propensity models on what a customer looks like. Is it a fraud score? Yeah. Is it not a fraud score? Yeah. Is it large loss if you go in the motor world? Or, all of this has been established for many, many years. But what I'm seeing now is a slight change in that the outcome has always been the same, i.e. we're trying to reduce on things like claims, we're trying to reduce indemnity spend, and we're trying to reduce operation expenses. And the buzzwords at the time was BPO, and I'm going to bring in all the automation, which is still valid, but the question is, was it really, really adding value? And the people that were supporting all these initiatives, did they really have it working, or were they trying to grow their empires? And I think, right now, the use cases that we're certainly seeing, that I'm certainly working on, especially in things like the pet world, I'm actually seeing true evidence now that should an expensive claims handler be managing a pet claim at £350? Should he even be touching that claim? Is there a need to fire up a policy system that lives on a different platform and then looking at different records of invoices and treatment plans that sit on another platform and spending time looking at this when we actually know that the ability for AI to automate all of these documents and make a good enough decision as to whether or not this claim fits in one of three buckets: the pay, the referral, or the reject. I think that technology is there, sitting there live. The question is, there's not enough use cases being developed that I'm seeing. And then what I've always seen in previous examples is the implication of the regulator. as to whether or not that will go through as a happy path on a claim settlement.
So crikey, that's a pretty thorny subject. So going back to the first one about all the change that had gone on in the past, everything from BPO and the others, I have a theory about this. It all promises good, returns and those sorts of things, and I'm sure they've been achieved in certain areas. But I also have a theory that insurance abhors a vacuum. So you find a way of reducing costs, an insurance company will find a way of filling it back up again through whatever it is. And it could be transformation initiative. Perversely, transformation costs money. So let's just say we've delivered the last transformation or whatever it is, benefit case. We go and spend it on something else. So actually, when you look at it, it's pretty flat throughout. The operational costs really don't move at all. They're all pretty stubborn. Or was it 20, 22% across the board?
So, Bart, are we not seeing a drop
No.
in any times of loss ratio or combined operating ratio? Is it? Because
Well,
it's got to be coming down.
It's so cyclical, though, isn't it?
But we're putting in these big transformation projects. They've got to be coming down.
It's not really, is it? I mean, I tracked it. I did a load of. I'm a numbers geek. I love my numbers, and it was last year or the year before. I looked back over 5 years worth of results for the major insurers, and no, is the answer. It hasn't made a lot of difference. And again, that's looking at the surface. Combined operating ratios, claims ratios, expense ratios, and those sort of things. It hasn't really moved. But the reasoning for that, I couldn't tell you. But you look at it, the board numbers, nothing's changed. In terms of your second question around claims, yes. If you could focus your claims people on the right claim, the one that has bodily injury, the one that has legal expenses or potential litigation, those sorts of things, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Scott, we've been talking about this for years. Have we seen too much of it? Jury's out on that. Is it absolutely possible with AI? 100%. Why aren't we doing it? That's the question.
See, and this, I think this is what feeds into, and I've seen this many, many times before, and I'm a big fan of it, and we don't do it enough. And I think previously we didn't do things like hackathons and boot camps. We didn't do enough of them because the technology probably was too expensive to spin up and configure. Whereas now, at a flick of a switch, we can bring in data, like you said, with huge capacity. We can bring in data and we can start learning and failing super quickly. I've recently seen, 14 different test and learn scenarios that were built in a couple of days. 2 of them worked, the other 12 got ditched for reasons, but that organization came out with 2 products that were very, very meaningful. And it was purely because the technology allowed business users to rapidly build and deploy and test and learn and see if it was correct.
So I like that idea of doing that. The problem is when I think about it, is where do you start? Where do you start? I mean, there's so much that could be changed in an insurance company, and we all know that. And it doesn't matter if it's life, P&C, it doesn't matter if it's specialty.
Yep.
There's always stuff to change. And clearly, we talked about it earlier, there's regulation, culture, technological debt, all those sorts of things which are impeding it. Where do you start? So, one of the things that I've seen recently is, so this whole idea around Excel rating, going back to rating, and being able to connect that up reliably in a governed way, so it's tested and it's versioned and those sorts of things, and it's automatically connected to the underwriting platform. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But then you look across the rest of the estate and you think, well, there are loads of critical spreadsheets in here, but you've got 100,000 spreadsheets. Where do you start? And that actually impedes people. So everybody knows, and it's the same, going back to what you're talking about, everybody knows we've got to do this. Everybody knows that we've got to look at this, and we've got to look at the critical spreadsheets within the overall architecture and the overall business process that's out there, the operations of the business. But where do you start? It's really hard to understand where. But that's where AI can help.
But that process seems to get neglected, doesn't it? Because the way I see it is, the most important things to the insurers is back-end pricing. Let's make sure we got our technical price. And then from a technical price to a street price, we've got to go through our process. But no one sees it. The end part is a quote and bind. This middle part that glues everything together seems to get neglected.
It does.
Plus,
that's the bottleneck.
that's the bottleneck. Plus, also what I've seen is the ability and the number of failure points on that journey is horrendous, because you just think of a normal standard. It doesn't matter what line of business. The standard process is still the same. I'm going to come up with a price. I'm then going to produce rating tables. I need to test all them. And then I'm going to convert them rating tables into some rating, whatever.
Yeah,
and then I've got
to... It can be sold.
And then I've got to test that before it can be sold. That's right. So that, right, do you think from your experience, is that middle part of gluing that together, is that included in these transformational projects, or do you think it's missed?
Evidence would say it's a mixed bag. I'm not hedging my bets here. I've seen it all. Yeah, I've seen everything where there is a really glued up process, but glued together, end-to-end process. But that actually creates an inflexibility that actually impedes innovation within pricing. So you need a bit of flexibility. I think the thing here is that what really works is having flexibility in pricing, flexibility in products, flexibility in your front end, flexibility at the back end, do things in the way that you need to do them, but have it all stuck together in a cohesive operation and process, but use technology to do that. And I think that's really important. But kind of going back slightly, you've made me think about something. I blame you.
Which is a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, it is. But it goes down to this whole thing about the AI use case. We talk about these things, and we've rambled a little bit about, rating claims and systems and products and pricing and all of these sorts of things, new products. The lifeblood of insurance is actually to get out there and write profitable business. Underwriting profit is everything. Everything else is vanity. But in terms of change, in terms of all these things, where do you start? And I think we have, whatever is we talk about it. I'm behind it all. I'm involved in sales and marketing. I have to understand about product and how we get it out to market. And what we look for are the burning platforms. But is the burning platform that you've got in front of you, for whatever reason, whether it is regulatory, whether it is new lines of business, whether it is we've got to reduce costs, is that actually the thing that's going to produce you long-term change and long-term transformation? And I would suggest that a lot of this is whatever's in your face, whatever you're doing, when you deal with it there. Isn't the use case for AI behind all of this is to look across all the data? Isn't this be lovely? And look all across the data and plug it into your business and say, where's my biggest problem? Where is my biggest problem? And we start there. Wouldn't that be lovely?
I suppose, Bart, the problem with that is, I think, getting AI to tell us the problem, but as you know, things can pop up quite immediately. Mm-hmm. You might find that a certain segment of the business is not performing as it should be. So then all of a sudden, you've got this ambition to build this capability, and this one pops up that doesn't necessarily need the AI and resource to look at it because it's so important. So I get it. All of the data I've got, I get it. Point it at AI and tell me what the issue is. But sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. It's not that easy.
Well, we go. No, well, it is and it isn't. So now, the reason it is, if you're really honest about what's going on and you have the necessary data and you examine it in the right way, then absolutely. Why? You should be able to anticipate where problems are, because experience comes to play. It's not rocket science to be able to see what's going on based on past.
It's not getting done, is it? I don't see it.
Well, we go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, which is that all the impediments to this. But again, I have a strong belief that whatever appears to be the most pressing need that you have now, it just happens to be the most pressing need that you have now. You're too hot, you're too cold. Yeah, that could be the thing. So I'm too hot, so I'm going to stand away from the heat source. Or I'm too cold, so I'm going to stand closer to the heat source. What actually your problem is your house has got a hole in the roof. Yeah, but all you're doing is standing closer or further away from the fire. So taking that analogy, saying you need to fix the hole in the roof, not move closer to the fire, away from the fire. So, the problem that confronts you immediately is not necessarily the underlying issue that's going to solve it. And I think that's perhaps where we're at in terms of insurance transformation.
Bart, we're sort of coming to the end of this, but before we do, there's a couple of things. What given your experience across, I know you've had so many different roles, and you've touched everything. If I was to ask you a really, really simple or maybe complex question, to get transformation to work properly, what would you say were the top 3, top 5 ingredients to make sure that you successful in this, and not just adding another layer of complexity and inability that everyone's happened in the past? We're trying to get this right now. Can you, off the top, I don't know if I've put you on the spot here, but can you just name the top 3 or top 5? If you were to do these 5 things, we're in a good position.
Okay. So this is a hugely complex area, as you'd expect. But actually, there is one persistent thing. I don't think it's 5 things. I don't think it's 3 things. I think it's one thing. It's one thing built together, and it's about documentation. It really, really is. And that documentation is where you get 3 things. You need to understand what the use case is that you're trying to solve and what you're trying to solve for. You really need to understand the benefits of solving this. And again, a lot of the time, it's actually very difficult to understand the cost. So you look at an insurance company, and again, sorry, technical people and all the IT people I've worked with, but when I observe insurance companies, insurance technology is really expensive. But understanding what that server costs, understanding what that technology costs you, is really hard to break it down to that level of granularity. So if you're sitting in there and you're going to make a change within an architecture, saying, well, if I take out that server, I'm going to save £1 million. Well, it's really hard to get to that point. But you do need to understand the cost. So you need to understand the use case, you need to understand the cost behind it. But more importantly, and we touched on it earlier, you need to get an agreement with your suppliers that you both understand what you're changing. And you need to write it down. That's the thing, write stuff down. And then you can come to agreement. So it's documentation.
But Bart, is this where, if you get this wrong, this is where the inflated costs come from, and you never end up finishing? We know projects that have been going on for years and years and years, and it's even just putting in core platforms that take years and years and years. And the question is it the technology, or is it the miscommunication between all parties involved in order to deliver that successful project?
It's not the technology.
Right.
It's human beings being human beings and working together. It's really hard. Yeah, it's just the nature of these things. Somebody has to do the change. And when it comes down to it, it's having that clarity of what success looks like. Now, inevitability, I think speed is part of this. Because if you've got a 2-year program of change, by the time you got to 2 years, everybody's forgotten about the reason why you did it. And actually, certainly, the conditions around the business have completely and fundamentally changed. So actually what you set out for and what you end up with are 2 different things. I think delivering stuff at pace, embedding it in and then moving it on is so essential. It's so essential. So if you've got any deliverable that's more than 6 months out, forget it. You're asking for trouble, but write it down.
And Bart, I think that's one of the things that FintechOS and the Evolve platform has got in its favour. Just the way in which our product has been designed. It is for speed. It's super fast, and it allows us to build, but more importantly, it allows us to fail where we can throw something out and say that didn't quite work. And I think that's quite important, especially when you're building products, like I said, across that life-centric view that may involve banking capability, which is what we also do. It may involve that. So I definitely 100% agree with you. Speed to market, if that is required by the insurer or the MGA, that they need to spin up that capability quickly and fully documented, totally support that.
And remove, off the top of that, we were talking about it earlier, removing the IT bottlenecks.
Correct.
You remove the IT bottlenecks. There are not infinite IT resources, so being honest about what you're going to deliver, what the benefits of delivering that is, how you're going to deliver it, but do it quickly.
Okay. Bart, we're coming to an end. Look, I've known you a long time. I still like you for some reason. Got no idea
Yeah.
why. But look, it's been an honest pleasure. And can we do another session sometime?
Yeah, I'd really enjoy
I would
that.
love it. It's been great, mate.
Cheers, Scott.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.